For about 25 years, Oprah Winfrey had something no other person on television has ever really had. Not fame, not money, trust. If she held up a book, that book became a bestseller by the weekend. If she mentioned a product, it sold out. When she backed Barack Obama in 2008, economists at the University of Maryland actually ran the numbers and estimated the endorsement was worth more than 1 million primary votes. That is not a talk show host. That is closer to a weather system. And she did it while being the most emotionally open person on daytime television. She talked about her own life on air in a way nobody was doing then. People did not watch Oprah the way they watched other programs. They watched her the way you listen to a friend who has been through it. So how does someone with that much goodwill end up in a place where large parts of the internet now treat her as a punchline? Because the money never went anywhere. That is what makes this story strange. Let me take you back to a farm in Mississippi. Oprah Gail Winfrey was born in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, and spent her first 6 years with her grandmother, Hattie Mae Lee, in poverty most people cannot really picture. She has spoken about wearing dresses made out of potato sacks. That is not a metaphor she uses for effect. That was the material. Her grandmother also taught her to read before she was 3 years old and had her reciting in church so young, the congregation nicknamed her the preacher. So the woman who would eventually run the biggest book club on earth learned to read in a house with no plumbing. At 6, she moved to inner city Milwaukee to live with her mother, Vernita Lee, who worked as a housemaid. Then she was shuttling between Milwaukee and Nashville, where her father, Vernon Winfrey, worked as a barber and later served on the Nashville City Council for 16 years. At 14, she became pregnant. Her son was born far too early, and she lost him within weeks.
When I was 14 years old, I became pregnant and hid the pregnancy for 7 months.
She has since said she named him Canaan. She moved to Nashville permanently as a teenager to live with Vernon, and she has always been direct about what that meant. He saved me, is how she puts it. And here is what nobody expects. Within 3 years of that, she was on the radio. Oprah Winfrey took ownership of The Oprah Winfrey Show in 1988, and that single decision is the entire reason she is a billionaire. Quick context on how fast she climbed. Radio job in Nashville at 17, anchor at 19, the youngest and the first Black woman at that station. Baltimore at 22. Then in 1984, she took over a struggling program in Chicago called AM Chicago, and within months, it had overtaken Phil Donahue, who was the biggest name in the format. By September 1986, it was national. Now, here is the part everyone skips. She was already the #1 host in America, and she went to the network and asked to own the show instead of just starring in it. Her production company, Harpo, took over ownership and production outright. She spent $20 million buying and renovating her own studio in Chicago. The difference that made is almost comical. Forbes has laid it out plainly. Other hosts at that level were earning something in the range of $5 to $20 million a year in salary. Through ownership, at her peak, Oprah was pulling somewhere between $200 and $300 million a year. Same job, same audience, different paperwork. She was not the highest paid woman in television. She was the landlord. Oprah Winfrey did not only make herself, she made an entire generation of television personalities. And this is where the criticism actually begins. Phil McGraw came off her show. Mehmet Oz came off her show. Suze Orman, Rachel Ray, all of them launched from that platform. At the time, this looked like generosity. She had the biggest stage in America, and she was handing it out. Looking back, people have questions about who she handed it to, because the show also gave enormous airtime to ideas that do not hold up. She devoted episodes to The Secret and the Law of Attraction, which drew serious pushback from doctors and from people living with serious illness, because the underlying idea suggests your circumstances are something you attracted. In 2007, Jenny McCarthy appeared and claimed her instinct told her a childhood vaccine had caused her son's autism. The famous line was that she got her information from the University of Google. It went unchallenged. The medical community was not gentle about that one, and the vaccine claim itself has been completely discredited.
We are not an anti-vaccine community. We are an intelligent group of parents. The importance of having vaccines.
Then in 2009, she hosted Suzanne Somers, promoting unregulated hormone products and roughly 60 supplements a day. Oprah described her as possibly a pioneer. Newsweek ran a cover story about all of it, and people are still tracing that line forward. Mehmet Oz now runs Medicare and Medicaid for the United States government. Oprah Winfrey bought roughly 10% of Weight Watchers in 2015 for $43 million and joined the board. And at one point, that stake was worth over $400 million. This was not a passing endorsement. She was the face of the company. She She was in the commercials, in the campaigns, in the annual reports. And it fit her because she had spent decades making her own health journey a public storyline. She had done it on air, in front of everybody, in ways people still talk about. Then, in December 2023, she told People magazine she had been using a prescription medication as a maintenance tool. The reaction was immediate, and honestly, you can see why. Millions of people had spent years counting points, partly because she told them to. The message underneath all of it was always that this came down to discipline and effort. And then it turned out she had access to something most of them did not. To her credit, she did not hide from it. She hosted a full television special in March 2024, built entirely around shame and blame, and how people are treated over this. And in early 2024, she stepped off the board and donated her remaining shares to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, saying she did not want the conflict of interest hanging over her. The company filed for bankruptcy the following year. Oprah Winfrey and Dwayne Johnson launched the People's Fund of Maui in August 2023 after the Lahaina wildfires, and it went sideways almost instantly. They put in $10 million between them. Then they filmed a video asking the public to donate as well. Two billionaires asking regular people for money. The internet did not take a second to think about it. Johnson apologized fairly quickly and said he could have handled it better.
This time of need, you want to take care of the greatest need of the people, and that's giving them money.
Oprah went on CBS Mornings and said she felt terrorized and vilified online, which is a real thing to say out loud when the criticism is that you have more money than most countries. And here is the frustrating part. Because the fund itself worked, it raised close to $60 million and paid $1,200 a month to roughly 8,100 displaced adults. The money reached people. The optics never recovered. That is basically the whole modern Oprah problem in one story. The substance is usually fine. The picture of her standing in it is what people react to now. And that shift in how she is seen is worth understanding proper. Oprah Winfrey opened a leadership academy for girls outside Johannesburg in 2007, and she has always described it as the thing she is proudest of. She put around $40 million into it, not a donation to someone else's project. She designed it, she interviewed applicants herself, she picked the girls. Students from families with almost nothing, walking into a campus with a library and a theater and a yoga studio. She has said publicly that she never had children, and that these girls became that for her. Then, almost immediately, it went wrong. A dorm matron was charged with mistreating students. Oprah flew out, sat with the families personally, and said she was profoundly disappointed, which is about the most restrained thing a person can say in that situation. The matron was eventually cleared in court, the magistrate saying the case had not been proven to the required standard. There was also a lawsuit from the school's former headmistress, which was settled, and critics used all of it. The spending got picked apart. The whole thing became a story about a wealthy American arriving with a vision. But here is what tends to get left out. The school kept running. It has sent a long line of graduates onto universities, and it is still going nearly 20 years later. So which part of that is the story? Because I think that depends entirely on what you already believed about her. Oprah Winfrey is 72 years old and worth roughly $3.2 to $3.4 billion, according to Forbes, which is more than she has ever had. So let us be honest about the word fall, because it is doing something specific here. She did not lose the money. She has never stopped being the wealthiest self-made Black woman in America. This year, Forbes named her the greatest living self-made American. Her podcast launched in late 2024, and this April she signed a multi-year deal with Amazon that expands it to twice a week and folds in her book club. She still owns the Promised Land in Montecito. She is still with Stedman Graham, going on 40 years. Still unmarried, which she has always been relaxed about. What she lost is the trust, that specific thing she had where her word alone could move a country. And I think that is the actual story. It was never taken from her by a scandal. It drained out slowly, one recommendation at a time, as people got better at checking things for themselves. The empire is intact, the spell is not.